This is a complex search effort which requires multiple agencies with subject matter expertise and specialized equipment. While the U.S. Coast Guard has assumed the role of search and rescue mission coordinator, we do not have all of the necessary expertise and equipment required in a search of this nature. The Unified Command brings that expertise and additional capability together to maximize effort in solving this very complex problem. We're out of order here. As a recap, on Sunday, the Coordination Command Center in Boston received a report from the Canadian expedition vessel Polar Prince of an overdue 21-foot submarine Titan with 5 people on board. The Titan was attempting to dive on the wreck of the Titanic approximately 900 miles east of Cape Cod and 400 miles south of St. John's, Newfoundland. Approximately 1 hour and 45 minutes into the scheduled dive, the Polar Prince lost all communication with the Titan. The Polar Prince conducted an initial search and then requested Coast Guard assistance. The U.S. Coast Guard in Boston assumed the responsibility of search and rescue mission coordinator and immediately launched search assets. Since Sunday, the Coast Guard has coordinated search efforts with the U.S. and Canadian Coast Guard, Air National Guard aircraft, and the Polar Prince, which has searched a combined 7,600 square miles, an area larger than the state of Connecticut. These search efforts have focused on both surface, with C-130 aircraft searching by sight and with radar, and subsurface, with P-3 aircraft were able to drop and monitor sonar buoys. To date, those search efforts have not yielded any results. Search efforts have continued through last night and today. Today, the vessel Deep Energy, a 194-meter pipe-laying vessel, arrived on scene with underwater ROV capability. They have rendezvoused with the vessel Polar Prince and commenced an ROV dive at the last known of the position of the Titan and the approximate position of the Titanic wreck. That operation is currently ongoing. Additionally, a Canadian P-3 aircraft is currently conducting a 6-hour search of the area, and several C-130 aircraft and another P-3 are scheduled to fly this afternoon and this evening. The Canadian Coast Guard cutter, or vessel, John Cabot, is scheduled to arrive later this evening, and several other Canadian Coast Guard vessels and the Coast Guard cutter Sycamore are en route. Additionally, the U.S. Coast Guard has the U.S. Navy's SUPSAL, Supervisor of Salvage and Diving Command, is working with U.S. Transportation Command to bring additional assets to the search area. These more capable assets will be staged at a St. John's for further transport to the search area. There are also several private vessels, research vessels with ROV capabilities that are making preparations to join the efforts. So I want to reiterate, this is a very complex search, and the Unified team is working around the clock to bring all available assets and expertise to bear as quickly as possible in an effort to solve this very complex problem. We'll continue to provide updates as they become available. And again, our thoughts and prayers are with the crew and the families and their loved ones. We will provide unwavering effort as we continue the search. And I think at this time we'll open it up and take a few questions.
How would ROV work, sir? It's tethered to a ship and what it can see, and then would it actually plug?
So each of the ROVs, so that's kind of a vague question, right? ROVs have different capability. It's our understanding the current ROV that is deployed at the site now has some limited capability. It has a camera on board, but again, each of those is different, and we'll be gathering more information as that operation goes on through the day.
Captain, it's Tom Costello with NBC News. If your submersibles can find this sub, is there any way to retrieve it and save the people on board?
Yeah, so right now all of our efforts are focused on finding the sub. What I will tell you is we have a group of our nation's best experts in the Unified Command, and if we get to that point, those experts will be looking at what the next course of action is.
Captain, how many hours of oxygen are left that you know of, or that you can estimate right now on the submersible? And does it have to be approved or regulated?
Sure. So first of all, it's an estimate, right? Because we know from the data we were using as a starting point was 96 hours. We know at this point we're approximately about 41 hours.
41 hours left.
Yes.
And does it have to be approved or regulated? Does submersible, does it go through anything that you know of?
Yeah, I'm not sure of the exact technical piece of that. We know there's about 40 hours of breathable air left based on that initial report. Again, that was just the initial report based on 96 hours from when the vessel.
Captain, even with that amount of time that's left, let's say 41 hours or so, if you were to find the submersible at this moment, would that give you enough time to save these 5 people on board?
Yeah, So I don't know the answer to that question. What I will tell you is we will do everything in our power to effect a rescue. Again, it's going to depend on if the ROV finds something. It's going to depend on what they find, what needs to be, what steps need to be taken next, and really that is for the experts within the Unified Command to take a look at and then decide what the best course of action is.
BBC News.
It seems to have taken the mothership vessel, or those running this operation, about 8 hours to contact you on Sunday after they lost contact with the sub. Is that a cause of concern?
Listen, right now, our effort and our focus is on searching with what we know. As soon as we received the report on Sunday evening, we immediately launched search efforts. We flew assets that evening, and we've continued constant surface and air asset searches since that point.
You mentioned that the search operation is very complicated. What are the biggest challenges you're facing?
Well, this is a complex search, and it's complex for a variety of reasons. You're talking about a search area that's 900 miles east of Cape Cod, 400 miles south of St. John's. So logistically speaking, it's hard to bring assets to bear. It takes time. It takes coordination. And then we're dealing with, two pieces of, you're dealing with a surface search and a subsurface search. And frankly, that makes it an incredibly complex operation.
Captain, will the U.S. Navy or the Canadian Navy be able to get salvage equipment on time before the air runs out?
Obviously, getting salvage equipment on scene is a top priority. Unified Command is working through that to prioritize what equipment we can get there. There are ongoing operations right now via the U.S. Navy and Transcom to get equipment staged in St. John's and to get it on scene. I can't give you an exact timeline of when that's going to happen. What I can tell you is there is a full court press effort to get equipment on scene as quickly as we can.
Is that equipment already on the East Coast, though, or is it coming from the Pacific, for example?
No, so some of the equipment that's coming is coming from the East Coast, but again, we're talking about very heavy equipment. It's a complicated transport operation, but the best professionals in the world are working it, and that's U.S. Transcom.
When it comes to the equipment, can you put in more detail? Do you have a current 21 that's being shipped up to that location? And since you don't have a fleet-type vessel could be evacuated with the mission, what other assets you have? You have civilian ships that you have.
Yeah, so like I said, there are several civilian ships that have offered services heading that way. There are additional Coast Guard cutters. We hope to have a Canadian Coast Guard cutter on scene this evening. We hope that they may be able to assume on-scene commander. Polar Prince has been doing a great job with those duties, but if we could take some of that from them, that would be good. But your question about specific equipment, I'm not going to get into talking about specific equipment. Frankly, I'm not an expert on what that equipment is, but again, I can tell you we have experts in the Unified Command that are going through that, prioritizing what we need and then how we get it on scene.
Can you tell us about the personnel from Boston? How many people from here are out there, and also what equipment?
From Boston specifically, so Boston, where Boston plays a role is the command center, the rescue and coordination center is here in Boston. The aircraft that are coming in are coming from different locations, but the command structure is being worked out of Boston. And I think we have time for two more questions.
In all your years of experience, just how unique is this? Is the Coast Guard ever has a
Well, I don't want to speak about it. The Coast Guard is ever. I would tell you it's a unique operation. It's a challenging operation, but right now we're focused on putting everything we can at it and searching as hard as we can and getting the assets out there as quickly as we can.
And so these
Private companies, the other assets that are rushing to the area, what sort of assets do they have? Do they have ROVs, their source technology, the OTV?
Yeah, so there are some additional assets with ROVs. There is one asset that is working to get on scene with a decompression chamber. So those are all pieces that are coming together, and we're working those logistical challenges to get them there. And I think we'll take one more.
is rescue, a realistic prospect? What would that look like?
Well, I can't tell you exactly what it would look like. I would tell you that, we are out there, we're searching. We wouldn't be doing this. We wouldn't be searching and putting all effort out there. I think that, if the sub is located, that's a question that then the experts need to look at what is the best course of action for recovering the sub. But I think it's going to depend on that particular situation and if we encounter that.
Sir, is it true that the British offered assistance and they were told we don't need your assistance at this point?
No, I'm not aware of that. Again, what I would tell you though is that the Unified Command is working through prioritizing. We know that there's equipment out there that can be brought to the scene. The Unified Command is working through prioritizing what equipment we need and then how we get it there.
And the French are also responding to the ship as well?
Yes, that's my understanding. Correct. And I think we're going to wrap it there.
Yep,
thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. I really appreciate you guys coming out today. Include this portion of the brief on there. I can stay behind just to take some additional stuff that maybe wasn't answered. We can try to get some information back to you kind of a bit later.
Can you clarify the question about the netting here for days in Boston?
Yeah.
So are they not out there? Are they just working here?
Right. So the Rescue Coordination Center that he's talking about specifically, that's based in Boston. So the personnel that are working in the command and control environment, as far as building a lot of the search and rescue plans, sending out the information, coordinating those pieces, are here. The people affecting the mission, so the pilots, the air crews, all of the ships, those are based out of different areas. So our pilots, air crews are out of Elizabeth City, North Carolina. The Coast Guard cutter Sycamore, I believe, is out of Newport, Rhode Island, but they were operating already in the Arctic. So there are a number of people that are here working in that staff element, but are not physically located out in the search area, if that makes sense.
Command and control.
It is, yes.
Does
sounds like
Ocean Gate have another submersible that they could try to send down there?
I don't know.
It sounds like, for the most part, the staging area is moving to St. John's.
So I believe, yeah, a lot of it into St. John, Newfoundland, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's so. Our aircraft, the C-130 aircraft, they're based out of there as well. So I know there is a number of pieces going out there. Logistically, it's easier as opposed to from here.
Talk about Transcom organizing the different assets available. I asked Transcom, but they didn't know what you guys.
Okay.
So can you give a little bit more clarity on what kind of assets you have put in the water? I specifically asked about the Curve 41.
Yeah.
Is there one on the way?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. So I know a lot of those questions were unanswered on there, and it's a lot of it's because we're not the right agency to be asking that. I know as the command, we should be to be the one to give the answer to you, but we want you guys to hear it from the subject matter experts. So that's our next plan. Is what we want to do is give an opportunity for you all to get all of the subject matter experts we can into one location to kind of get those questions answered. To give you kind of the best thing we can do.
You anticipate in those 40 hours when that becomes a recovery mission, if you choose to do a recovery mission? Is that your plan? When those 40 hours are up that you gave for the estimate, is that the moment you shift from a search and rescue to a recovery operation, if you choose to do a recovery operation, given the difficulties?
I think it really depends on a number of factors. So anything that could change between now and then, as far as information response, things like that could change that. So it's not a hard and fast, timer's up, time to transition. There's a lot of factors that go into it that could extend something like that.
Excuse me, what role does the amount of oxygen play in one of those factors? And with 40 hours of oxygen left, when would you then transition from a search and rescue to a search and recovery?
I don't know an answer to that. That's definitely outside, but we can try to get back to as we transition through that phase. We'll have better answers for that.
Is there information about the conditions out there? Like what exactly are facing?
So the weather-wise, yep. So actually, I have, I believe the weather on scene today was 5 to 6 foot seas.
What does that mean? So sorry, like what wave?
So wave height, 5 to 6 feet. I believe it was 15 knot winds. Visibility was very foggy yesterday with very little nose visibility, but was increasing today, and they were expecting much better conditions from an aerial search perspective.
So it's like 6 waves today.
Yes.
And it's cleared in terms of visibility. High winds persist, or
It was 15 knot winds. So in terms, it's about average out there, right?
Okay.
How long would it take a typical Coast Guard vessel from the U.S., or for that matter from Newfoundland, to get on site if they're running at maximum speed?
That depends on the cutter itself or the ship itself, because they all have different speeds.
Yeah. But do you have an average, just so we have a feel for how long it would take to get there?
Well, depending on where they're coming from, it could be a matter of 2 days up to 4 to 5 days. It just depends on where they would be deploying from.
2 days from Newfoundland, for example.
I don't know. We don't have any ships up there, so I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. The Canadian, we're trying to find out more information on the Canadian vessels that are assisting on there, sort of what their capability and speeds are. I just don't have an answer for you on that right now.
Does the Coast Guard have a line on a piece of equipment that is capable of going down to the Titanic?
The Coast Guard specifically, no. This type of a salvage operation in our expertise as an organization is...
No, in terms of private companies, have you reached...
So that's all part of the conversation through the Fight Command to find out what capabilities are out there and explore all avenues that they can.
You're looking at that now.
The Coast Guard is usually pretty quick about releasing videos and photos and things like that from their operations. Is there a specific reason why you haven't from this operation?
We just haven't received any yet at this point.
And you don't expect it?
We do. We do expect to get some. Like I said, we do have some graphics that we're trying to look to send out this afternoon, as well as we've reached out to the aircraft crews to get footage from them. Now, I know with the ROVs that are on scene today, like I said, there just hasn't been any before. So we are requesting out there to try and see what we can get to go through that and try to make that available to you all.
What do you think it is?
The submersible was discovered on the bottom of the ocean right now. Right now, there are no assets on scene that could go retrieve. Is that correct?
I don't have an answer to
Coast Guard
that.
does not have any assets that could get it right now, correct?
The Coast Guard assets itself, no, we do not have any Coast Guard cutters on scene.
The other ones that are on scene.
No, so the research vessels, I just don't know what the capabilities are at
Do
that.
you think it's looking pretty unrealistic that it has made its way to the surface and its way seems to be spotted? Because you've done all of these aerial searches. Are you quite confident it's in the water?
That's why we have both types of assets, because we don't want to exhaust one possibility in vice of another. So we don't want to rule out that it is on the surface. And the way that our crews train, this is the environment they train in. They're specialized in being able to see these things from the air. So they've given it everything that they have to it. And if it's on the surface, we're fairly certain that we would be able to find it.
You would have by now.
No, that we will find it if it is on the surface.
Do you think it's more likely it's in the
It's impossible to say.
Can I just ask you to, I realize this may be challenging, you may not have the answer, but we're trying to get a sense of how far away the nearest naval asset would be that has that lift capability, salvage capability. Is it coming from North Carolina, from Florida, from Boston? Can you give us any idea of how far away it might be?
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that. Yeah.
Do you know if anybody, do you know if that vessel has a finger or some other way of communicating? Or is that
From the research vessel?
the Titanic itself?
Yeah. Oh, communicating with them? No, I don't have specifics on technology on board.
We understand they've lost contact in the past on other expeditions. Has the Coast Guard ever been involved with them?
Not to my knowledge.
But Ocean Gate is cooperating with the investigation.
Absolutely. They're part of the Unified Command in here, so we're all making decisions together.
So do they have anything else that could go down? 13,000 feet.
I don't know, but if they do, it's definitely being discussed as far as their capabilities.
Would they tell you if they did? I mean, so it doesn't sound that hopeful, to be honest.
I don't understand.
Like, it sounds like the nearest vessel that it's not clear how long it would take to get a vessel there.
Right. And that's the biggest part of the challenge of all of this, is trying to understand how the capabilities are working together, how they would do it, the technical aspect of that.
So if you're a family member of somebody on board, do you have a message for the family?
I think it was clearly stay with Captain Frederick.
Could we ask you, could you just describe, the crush depth here? We're talking about 400 times, as I understand it, what we all experience at sea level. What can that do to a vessel?
I can't speak to the scientific side of that. Again, this is just more or less trying to get some background information for you guys on there. I don't have any of that information on that.
Can you tell us about what the circumstances were? I mean, submersible doesn't necessarily, it goes in for a dive and walks right back up. It's not supposed to be there for that long. Is there
And that would be a great question that we could try to get answered for you with that subject matter expert discussion that we talked about to get an opportunity for you guys to ask that question, because it'd be much more important and realistic for somebody within that community part of the command that would be able to answer that question a lot clearer than anything I would be able to. So.
And when might you provide your next update?
So we do have a press release that's going to be going out shortly with the graphics we talked about. Probably similar information to what was passed today. If any new information comes up, we'll update that. But I think ideally we'd be putting out press releases daily, and would look at probably doing another briefing tomorrow.
Can I just ask you one last?
Sorry, what's whole? I don't know.
Could you just reiterate for us? How big of an urgency is this for the Coast Guard? How big of a priority? Do you prioritize these things? In other words, do you classify them as priority red, 1, 2, 3? How big of a priority is this?
This operation is our top priority right now. Within the district, we have every available asset that we can that's to this that we can dedicate to it on this. That's why we are spending so much time and energy trying to coordinate really this enormous response effort to truly understand the scale of how far away this truly is. And in the context of the types of assets that we can get out there over something that's that enormous, something larger than the state of Connecticut, into perspective of what is available to be able to search in those kind of conditions so far offshore. Understand, at 900 miles looks like is an enormous amount of distance.
Can I just ask, I mean, I've looked to the vessel before, but is a deep sea rescue effort realistic, and what would that look like?
I don't know what it would look like. Realistic, and that's all part of the conversation in the Unified Command that they're looking at, doing everything that they can to find out the options that are available.
Thanks, sir.
And family members have indicated the 5 people on board, but is there an official manifest or log saying exactly who was on that vessel?
There is on there. So not until all the necessary notifications have been completed through that process can we release names in that way. I know that some have gotten out, but they have not been through us.
Okay.
But,
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you. And
time.
we'll send out an update when the next advisory or advisory will be out for you guys.
Are there any briefings happening up at St. John's?
Not that I'm aware of. Nothing that we are setting up.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if they are up there independently.
Well, there we are. That is the end of the news conference in Boston on the issue of this missing submersible. Well, the important news came a little bit earlier from Captain Jamie Frederick of the US Coast Guard, who said his thoughts and prayers were with the 5 crew members and their families. But he said a complex search is underway involving multiple agencies. And he was talking about the search at the moment involving aircraft across, he said, 7,600 square miles, and no results yielded yet, he said. He said a submersible is on site, but with limited capability, and added that Coast Guard ships should arrive in the coming hours. And then the important fact that he said was that they think there are about 40 hours of breathable air remaining. So our correspondent John Sparks is in St John's in Newfoundland. And John, well, some detail of the rescue, but no good news at the moment.
Hi, Mark. Yeah, that's right. I mean, the key point there, and you've mentioned it, is that their search efforts have wielded no results so far. And over the last couple of days, they have been able to search a large amount of territory, 7,600 square miles, an area larger than the state of Connecticut, said Captain Fredericks. He also went on to say that this is a really complicated, multi-agency search and rescue operation, deploying specialist equipment, Canadians, the Americans, Coast Guard, the military, private actors as well. We know that there is a private ship, sophisticated ship, on site now that lays cables on the ocean floor. It has sophisticated imaging for the bottom of the ocean in place now. But interestingly, the US Coast Guard officials saying no one actor has all of the equipment, all of the specialist equipment and knowledge and techniques that they need in its entirety to carry out this search and rescue effort. As such, it makes it very complex. They've got to coordinate things amongst a whole range of actors. Interesting as well that he said they're going to move this operation to St. John's in Newfoundland. That's about 380, 400 miles from the wreck of the Titanic. We've just been speaking to the Premier of Newfoundland, the guy in charge politically in this province. He says he's been speaking to the Americans. He's been speaking to the British as well. He's offered the assets, hard assets and soft assets, everything they've got. He'll do what he can here to help the search and rescue effort as well. But so far, no results. I think it goes to show just how difficult this task is.
Okay, John, thank you very much indeed. Well, the Royal Navy Warfare Officer, Rear Admiral Chris Parry, is with me. And, well, just first of all, what did you make of what you heard in that news conference?
Mark, that was no news. They're just saying they're on the case. They don't know where to find this thing. They're looking almost everywhere they can. I think 7,600 miles is a bit steep. If you even plot on where the thing could have gone if it just drifted, it's not out that far. So they're actually doing what they can. They're being seen to do what they can. So they don't have a location to start the search. So that's a bit of a problem. There's these remote operated vehicles that are on site now that can probably go down and use video cameras, but that's a painstaking search. So if you don't know where to start, that's going to be a long operation. And secondly, I think implicitly they said, you know what, we don't have a solution, even if we do find it. We've got these experts coming together, we've got this machinery coming together, but I'm not seeing anybody coming up with a solution as to how they're going to bring this thing to the surface again.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because he said there is no one agency, and there are a lot of agencies involved in this, military, Coast Guard and civilian. No one agency has the equipment, you know, to carry out the rescue, even if they identify where the submersible is.
Yeah, I mean, what's going on here is, if you've seen the film Apollo 13, people are scratching their heads saying, well, if we find it, how are we going to deal with this? Because nobody's attempted this before. So I take the point, but right now, they don't have a location, they don't have a solution, and the time is running out. This is getting very urgent in terms of air. And unless they bring in some very radical solutions, which possibly involve active sonar buoys and things like that, then this is going to run out of time.
And what's your hunch? Is it still down there, or could it be on the surface, floating around somewhere?
I think if it's been floating around somewhere on the surface, it would have been found. The sort of sensors they've got in the aircraft and the ships are good enough to find something of this size. I suspect it's still down there, and what condition it's in, nobody knows, I'm afraid. We just don't have any hard evidence. My worry is it's not transmitting anything. So you're not picking up any sonar pulse or any distress beacon. So how on earth are you going to find this?
Yeah, and what sort of rescue operation, what sort of equipment would be needed to carry out the rescue?
In conceptual terms, only two things I can think of are getting a wire down there from the cable ship and dragging it up, or getting another underwater vehicle that's got a grab arm that can actually grab hold of the thing and bring it up, hug it if you like, and bring it up to the surface. That's never been done over this depth before. It would be totally new, and I'm not sure I can think of what sort of equipment would be involved there. Maybe something from the oil and gas sector, but actually the depth involved is astonishing. So I'm very worried about this. I would be if I were out there doing this operation myself, because actually I don't have any ideas.
What about the submersibles he mentioned that were on site, and then he said, but with limited capabilities? So what would they be able to do?
Essentially, they will go down either tethered or they'll go untethered, in other words, semi-autonomous. And I think what he was hinting at is they've got sort of imaging cameras on the front, and they'll go and look. But that's like ploughing a field. You don't have any wide vision, so you can't cover a huge area. They're going to have to go up and down until they find something. And let's not forget the amount of debris that's in this area around the Titanic. So it's going to be a very difficult task. You know, if they pull this off, it will be stunning. There's no question about that.
Yeah, and I mean, if they are still alive down there, as you say, time is running out. He mentioned this figure of 40 hours of breathable air remaining, and I would think that that's probably at best, that's assuming there's been no other sort of problems.
Yeah, you know, they may have run out of electricity by now, of course. It may be getting cold down there. There's all sorts of problems. One doesn't like to think of the worst case scenario, but the odds are stacked. There's no question about it.
I mean, in your experience, is anything like this before? Well, obviously, I mean, look, there was the submarine, the Kursk, but which was a completely different situation in terms of it was Russian military on a submarine, and they couldn't be rescued.
Well, with the Kursk, they could have been rescued because a rescue vehicle, particularly a British one, that can actually get in position over the escape hatch of the Kursk, could have got people out, because you can transfer directly from the submarine to the escape module.
But they weren't asked? But
no, I'm afraid
the British were asked. But
the Russian...
Vladimir Putin, I think, had just come into power, and
they just kept hold of it. They refused to release any information, and I think 23 sailors who were alive in that submarine died as a result. Not the case here. You can't put a capsule like this over the top of this sort of submersible. You also can't get them down to that depth to do it. So the thing's got to come off the bottom if you find it, one way or another, either through a submersible grabbing it and bringing it to the surface, or through a cable bringing it up. But I must stress, the key issue is finding it. And frankly, that press conference, they're just saying, look, we're doing all we can, but, you know, not to much effect at the moment.
So just to sum up, you think things are pretty bleak?
I think I would reflect on the fact that I'm an optimist who worries a lot. I'm worrying a lot about this.
OK, Chris, for now, thank you very much indeed. Let's bring in retired submarine commander in the US Navy, Captain David Marquet. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. And I don't know whether you heard what was said in the news conference, but it does seem that they're mounting a major search operation, but at the moment there is no good news.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I listened to the admiral, and I agree with what he's saying, his assessment of it. What I found concerning was, first of all, they haven't found it yet, so it's probably on the bottom. It's not on the surface. Now we're using these ROVs, and so imagine they're going like inch by inch. They're searching inch by inch by inch, and we have a big area on the bottom that the thing could be. So it's like I'm surfing a football pitch with a magnifying glass. We could get lucky, we could find it, but we don't like to bank on luck. The thing I found concerning was the way the commander was talking about, hey, look, we're just focusing on finding it. And we always would try and think in terms of parallel action. So the next step is, once we find it, we got to get it up to the surface. These guys are bolted in from the outside. So we got to get up to the surface and over to the mothership so we can unbolt it and then free them, and so they can breathe oxygen again. So what you need to be doing is getting whatever ship has the ability to drop that cable and then connect it to this lost submarine and bring it back up. You need to be doing that now, so that when you find it, you're not starting fresh. Oh, hey, look, let's look around, see if we can find a ship that's got a cable. So to me, I'm a little concerned, which it sort of almost sounds to me like they've kind of admitted that the chances are really, really, really slim on this. So slim it's probably not even worth moving to the next step.
It did seem that way, and they did mention these submersibles at the scene now, but they didn't go into great detail. They didn't seem to think that they could be of much use. They said limited capability.
Well, yeah, so these are submersibles that are designed for a different function. It's either a oil industry ship or a cable laying ship. So they're designed to go to a specific spot that they know where they're going. They look at something. They maybe can manipulate a cable or something on the bottom, and then they come back up. And what we're trying to use them for is what we would call wide area search. And something like scanning with your eyes on the surface, or scanning with a radar, or scanning with a sonar system that's designed for those wide area searches. That's what you need. But they're doing the best with the tool that they have in the terms of using this submersible to try and find the submarine.
So it is a race against time. He did mention this figure of about 40 hours of breathable air. So that just gives a sense of what a race against time it is. And presumably there's the question of the weather as well.
Yeah, well, of course, if the weather turns bad, that just makes everything 10 times harder. And if they're alive on the submarine, they're doing everything they can to extend that oxygen supply. They're meditating, they're napping, they're not doing any excess movements. I'd probably have someone banging on the hull, say rhythmically every 15 minutes, and see if that sound could transmit. You want to be doing the following three things. Number one, if you're on the bottom, figure out what's broken so you can get to the surface. Number two, if you can't do that, or in addition, make noise, use your transmitters, pingers. If those aren't working, bang on the hull. And then number three, extending your oxygen. You do that by remaining calm, reducing your metabolic activity, meditating, and that will reduce the amount of oxygen you use and the amount of carbon dioxide poison that you put into this very small confined space that's shared by 5 people.
Should we take some hope from the fact that certainly there are experienced explorers down there? There is an experienced submersible pilot down there, the Frenchman, who it seems has been down many times. Should we take some hope from that? They will be going through what you have just said, maybe?
Yeah, these are not naive people. Even the people described as, quote, tourists, like Hamish Harding, they're not naive. They are the right people to do the right things in the situation. But human willpower is only so much. The laws of physics, the fact that this is 300 times atmospheric pressure pressing on the ship, that's going to be really hard to overcome.
And just finally, Captain, I just wondered what your view is of, a commercial operation like this, in a submersible like this, at a depth like this.
As a member of the human race, I appreciate the fact that there are explorers that go and climb mountains and try to find the Straits of Magellan and press into space and the deepest parts of the ocean. We're better off as a species because of these people, but not all these people come back, and it's risky. I think these people knew the risk when they signed up. The CEO of the company is on board, so he certainly believed in his equipment. But I know how hard it is to keep a submarine at sea in the corrosive, cold, terrible environment with the pressure pressing in. Fittings corrode, then they leak, and then the water causes rust, and it makes a pipe thin, and then that pipe bursts, and next thing you know, you have a major accident. So it's really daunting to think about what's behind that. The Royal Navy, the U.S. Navy, Australian Navy, we have the resources to have the people and the testing and inspections that we do all the time on our vessels. And I just don't know whether a commercial entity is dedicating those resources, those kind of resources, because they're trying to make a profit.
Okay, Captain, look, I really appreciate your expertise and your time. Thank you very much indeed.
Cheers.
And just to recap what we heard in that news conference, this major search operation is underway in the Atlantic, but the US Coast Guard, Captain Jamie Frederick, saying as yet no results have been yielded, and it's hoped that Coast Guard ships will be on the scene